Somehow there's something magical about the idea of secret, that something happens inside us when we do the yoga postures that we're familiar with outside. But what are those interior experiences? What happens inside that makes yoga postures so unique and interesting to us? Well, we could understand it in a variety of different ways. For example, we could understand it in terms of physical anatomy. We may say, for example, that we're doing an overhead stretch, lifting the arms, bringing them up, interlacing and reaching. But certainly in addition to doing an overhead stretch, there's something happening anatomically. Shoulders are elevating, chest lifts, the low back lengthens, the palms reach up, out, and down. Anatomically, inside, there's an experience of freedom, of releasing boundaries that otherwise restrict us. Lifting the arms out to the side, turning the palms up, in itself does something to the shoulder joints and something to the lower arms, supinating the lower arm and rotating the shoulder joint. Turning the palm and coming down means that I release that effort. Now it happens that there are subtle ways in which what we do is united in a yoga posture, but really requires a certain kind of anatomical detail to explain it. For example, when the legs are drawn apart and hands are at the waist, it becomes possible to tip the pelvis without tipping the torso or the arms. The pelvis tips from side to side, and there's a stretch in the inside of the thigh and groin. That stretch in the inner thigh is increased by tipping the torso. Now, if I want to come back to the center, I'll bring the hip back and naturally lift the torso. The other side, tip the pelvis, lengthen the torso. So now a pose which we usually think of in yoga as a side bend is really a posture that involves stretching the muscles, tiny muscles in the inner thigh, and working from side to side, maintaining balance. The next step in this process is to tip the pelvis, lift the arm, slide the arms out and down, so that now the pelvis tips back to the center, tips to the other side, and the arm lengthens. This side bend is familiar to every yoga student. But the interior life of this bend is in the inner thighs, groins, out through the side of the hip, and up through the arms and fingers. We would like to be able to recognize how the body moves and to make those movements part of our understanding of a yoga posture. If we do the same thing for the hip joint, we might come down to hands and knees, bring the left knee into the middle so that there's a triangle supporting us underneath, and take the right knee out to the side, up, back, and around. Our interest is in increasing the range of motion at the hip joint. If I take that movement straight back and straight forward, I add to the dimensions of the stretch. And if I take it up, rotate, bend, and reach, now the stretch becomes something altogether different, involving the low back as well as the knees. So the secret life of postures, although it's not so secret, is that yoga postures affect us internally. They increase the range of motion, they strengthen, and they stretch areas of the body which are defined not only by the name of the posture, but by the actual movement of a joint or a muscle group. Now there is another way in which there's an interior life of postures. The interior life of postures is also a kind of mythical life. There's a name of a being whose name is Virabhadra. Virabhadra was an assistant, you could say, to the great infinite Lord of life, Shiva. And when Shiva was being insulted, Virabhadra was commanded to go and disrupt the ceremony. Virabhadra flew through space. And as he flew through space, his outer limbs protected and supported him, whereas his intention carried him forward. There are 6 directions in which this pose moves: out through the fingertips, up through the crown of the head and down through the tail of the spine, as well as down through the legs. The right knee points just at the second toe, and so Virabhadra involves alignment. One posture, but a great internal experience of all kinds. That posture itself can be transformed. And so the Inner Life of Postures talks about the transformation of one thing into another. As the arm comes down, the torso tips, there's a long stretch from the heel of the rear foot through the fingertips of the upper arm, and one pose has been transformed into another. Then the arm is lifted, released, and strengthened coming out of the pose. The legs are drawn together, and the pose returns to neutral. The interior life of postures continues through a relaxation resting on the ground. And if we want to really follow the interior life of poses, then we have to take it beyond just simply doing the postures into an internal life which is quiet and centered. And so the final stage of postures and their interior experience is to set the body down, to rest the body comfortably on the floor, and to let these postures transform you. The interior life of poses also involves a kind of energetic experience. And that energetic experience can be part of the posture sequence, as well as part of something that you experience after the poses are over. So, the interior life of poses really turns out to be the nature of poses, the real life of poses. And any kind of sequence of postures should help awaken in us an experience of being within ourselves.